Billy Napier lands the biggest recruiting class of his entire career at UF. He's currently right now ranked at 11th. That number is going to drop a little bit, and I'll explain to you why later on in the video. But overall, this is a very superb class that he's bringing in to make up for what happened last year. Because last year he was ranked third in the nation, but then eventually he had some decommitments that knocked down his class from third down to about, I think it was like the early to mid teens. You know, Jamonte Waller and Hadarius Hayes and Xavier Filsaime. I think they both flipped in Amerisones. I think they all three of those guys flipped on ESD. This year, he does a much better job of finishing. At one point, when he got the letter of approval from Scott Strickland leading into the Texas blowout, Florida was down in the 50s per 247 in terms of recruiting rankings. But now he's now bumped him up to almost what's again almost a top 10 class. So again, another good recruiting class with Billy Napier, but he has yet to put them in the top 10 recruiting wise without including transfer portal additions. But overall, this was still a good class. I'm not going to sit here and say that it was no longer good because it's not in the top 10 or because Florida just barely missed out on a few guys that were expected to flip to them last night, but ultimately changed their mind. Those guys were Dallas Wilson, who signed with Oregon, and Solomon Thomas, who instead of flipping to Florida, flipped to LSU, and almost Jamie French, who chose to stay with Texas. So I'm bringing up their recruiting class right now. 2025 recruiting class. They have 23 commitments. It was at 24 at the start of the year, at the start of the day, but Tayshawn Gessley what Tayshawn Gessley is going to be decommitting from Florida and will not be signing with the Gators. I hear he's likely to flip to LSU, and the reason why he's flipping is because he is at the position that Florida wants it. Florida wants him to play at tight end. He, on the other hand, views himself as a receiver, and he wants to play at receiver. So he's going to be leaving Florida's recruit class because of that. Now, from based off of watching Billy Napier's offense the last 3 years, because he's been the one calling plays because it's his offense, right? I think it was a good move to touch on Gessley because I don't think it's tight end friendly in terms of being a pass catcher. He utilized the tight ends a lot in terms of moving them around left side, right side, in motion, lined up in the slot, lined up in the backfield on some occasions. Uh, does have them run routes, does have them block. So he utilized the tight ends, but I don't think um, it's a great offense for a tight ends to get a high volume of targets because Billy Napier likes to run the football and he likes having receivers in motion and he likes having to throw the ball downfield to have that dialed up. So I don't think it's a great option to be a pass catching tight end in this offense because Aldis Birmingham he came on strong at the end of the 2023 season, but he kind of lost himself. I shouldn't say lost himself, is that he didn't get the same numbers that he did, you know, last year, and he was clearly the number one tight end on the team. So I think it was actually a good move by Tayshawn Gisley to go elsewhere because as a tight end, it's not really a great offense for the tight end position as a pass catcher. He utilizes the tight end a lot, but not as a big target threat in the passing game. And plus, at playing at wide receiver, Florida has a lot of receiver talent, and we're going to get into that in this recruiting class. So Gessley probably knows that by flipping to Florida State allegedly, that his chances of playing on the field immediately as a freshman are better. So now, having said that, we're now going to get into the recruiting class that was very low at one point, but now has come back strongly. Obviously, the highest rated player is Vernell Brown, the third wide receiver, composite, the only 5-star of this class. His composite is 0.9857, and after that you have Hilton Stubbs, who they flipped from Miami, Laganza Hayward, a defensive, both of those guys are defensive backs. Stubbs and Hayward, who they flipped from rivals. Stubbs, Miami, Hayward, Tennessee. You have Jalen Wiggins, Florida's highest rated defensive lineman. He's been locked in since early in the year. Ben Hakes Jr., like Vernell Brown III, a legacy recruit. He's a defensive back. You have Waltez Clark, who's the highest rated running back on Florida's class. Florida has 3 running backs. We'll talk about those 2 left. You have Ty Jackson, Florida's highest rated linebacker. You have Jaden Woods, Florida's the only edge rusher on Florida's class. You have Deshaun Montgomery. You have Tavares Dice, who's Florida's highest rated offensive lineman. not just of this class, but in Billy Napier's tenure. They flipped him from Auburn, and then you have a couple of Florida State flips from Byron Lewis and Tramel Jones Jr., a quarterback who could develop behind DJ Lagway and Aiden Warner. Joseph Mbachu, who flipped from Texas, who flipped he committed to Florida, flipped to Texas, and then flipped back to Florida. Stephon Shivers, who Florida flipped from Georgia. Miles Johnson, who flipped from Alabama. You have Chad Gaspar, Jeremiah McLeod, Micah Jones, Florida's only tight end of the class. It could have been Tayshawn Gessley, could have been number 2, but he chose elsewhere. Jahari Medlock, who Florida flipped from Cincinnati. Another Florida State flip in Daniel Pierre-Louis, interior offensive lineman. Moise Tankara, a flip from Arizona. Evan Knoll, a flip from Arkansas, like Jaden Ball last year. Look how well that worked out. He's a place kicker, Evan Knoll. You have another special team, and you have a couple more special team guys in long snapper Mac Mulhern and Hayden Craig as the punter. So very good recruiting class for Florida. Again, top 15 it's going to be, even with the loss of Tayshawn Gessley. Could have maybe flipped Dallas Wisland or Solomon Thomas, but I'm not going to be too upset about this. I think this is a very good recruiting class for the staff. I think they did a great job of bolstering depth at receiver. They really bolstered the depth at the running back position. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit of a headache here as I'm talking. And they also did a good job of getting elite players in the secondary with Hilton Stubbs and Lagonza Hayward and Ben Hanks Jr. It's been a while since Florida has been defensive back. It used to be one of the top premier schools for defensive backs at one point in the 2010s, but they haven't been able to recruit at the level to stay at that premier defensive back spot, and they've done that because they've brought in 3 excellent, talented guys in that secondary, in Stubbs, Hayward, and Banks and Hanks Jr. Excuse me. Talked about the wide receiver position, the running backs, Waltez Clark and Byron Lewis and Chad Gasper. I've criticized Billy Napier a lot during this time at Florida, but there's one thing I don't criticize him with is running backs, because he has brought in 4 contributing very productive running backs in the backfield. Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne and Jaden Ball and Jacoby Jackson as a JUCO transfer. And Trayon Webb was even looking good last year, but he fractured his tibia. So they saw a couple of spurts from him in the Texas A&M Mississippi State game, but he had to leave out due to injury. So it's going to be a very crowded offensive backfield for Florida. And DJ Lagway is also going to be having Trayon Webb come back next year, and along with Aiden Mizell and Trey Wilson at the wide receiver spot. So if you're DJ Lagway, man, you're like looking at this. You're looking at your skill possessions and the guys that you have to give the ball to, and you're like, man, this offense is going to be so much easier. It's just a little bit of a question mark of how the offensive line is going to be because of some players that could potentially leave, and how much of the players from this current season are coming back next year. So there's going to be a competition at the depth wise for the offensive line. So that's really the only question mark of this offense. You have the quarterback. You brought in a backup quarterback who probably is better than Aiden Warner at the moment. No disrespect to him, but but that guy's a freshman, so you're not expecting him to be ready in case something happens to Lagway or Warner. So you're just going to have him develop. You have a stable of running backs, a stable of receivers, and another tight end to the group. So it's a very good group of pass catchers and running backs for the offensive side of the ball. And you go to the defensive side, I already talked about the defensive backs, but also the linebackers with Ty Jackson, who, I forgot to mention, flipped from USC. Ty Jackson flipped from USC, and you have Miles Johnson who flipped from Alabama. The linebacker room for Florida is going to be insane next year, because you could have the potential of both Pop Howard and Shamar James returning. Pop Howard is a transfer from South Carolina this past season, heading into his 3rd year. And you have Shamar James heading into potentially his senior season if he were to come back. And behind those guys, you have Graham and Aaron Childs, and you have these dudes coming in as freshmen. And Jaden Robinson, who also contributed number 29 as a linebacker for Florida this season, he was able to make some plays towards the end of the year. So it seemed like the green lights come on for him. There's just so much talent in that linebacker room. It's by far the deepest position on the linebacker on defense, and I don't think it's close. There's just so much talent. You would hope that maybe they could find a way to put maybe 3 or 4 of those guys on the field at the same time constantly, but that's probably not the kind of system that the defensive coaches want to run. And for the defensive line position, having Joseph Mbachu and Stephon Shivers and Jalen Wiggins coming in there, uh, Cam Jackson, shout out to him, is going to be playing in the bowl game for Florida. But so this is his last game as a Gator. Caleb Banks may potentially be gone next year. Desmond Watson, he's been with Florida since 2021, so this is probably his final year of eligibility. So there's some depth and some size leaving that Florida defensive line. Kelby Collins is also entering the transfer portal. So there's a lot of there's going to be a lot of um, opportunities for the new defensive lineman of next year. And Stephon Shivers to me may be the under the radar signing of not just the defense but maybe the entire class, because he plays running back and he plays nose tackle. And I think I think they said like he's like 360 pounds. I'm gonna look it up right here since I'm talking. If that's the case and you can have that guy play a running back at his size, then that means that his lateral quickness and short area quickness is not to be played with, and it's amazing. He's 365 pounds. So to have a guy be able to play running back in high school, man, you know his athleticism is insane. And he could be an improvement off of what Desmond Watson is. Desmond Watson was hoping. Florida should be getting back Jamari Lyons, who broke his ankle in the fall camp before the season started. So him coming back in there is going to provide a nice depth and another nice big body for the defensive line. But ultimately, this was a very good recruiting class for Florida. Oh, and let me not leave out special teams. Evan Knoll is argued as one of the best, is arguably the best kicker in coming out of high school, one of the best kickers coming out of high school at a Bay St. Louis. I'm guessing that's Mississippi. He could be a guy that could play after if Trey Smack chooses to go to the NFL this season, because I think Trey Smack is a junior. So if Trey Smack wanted to come back 1 year, then you can have Evan Knoll as a keep him in your back pocket and just have him, just get used to being a college student, because he's a kicker. There's not really that much of a learning curve for him as opposed to a guy who's playing wide receiver or running back or whatever. But like I said, all around good positions. And Hayden Craig could be a starting punter for Florida next year, because Jeremy Crenshaw is in his final year of eligibility. So, good year. So good recruiting class for Billy Napier. I said it before, I'll say it again. He ended the 2024 season strong in the year that he needed it, winning 7 games this year, which is not the Gator standard, but considering the fact that you have back-to-back losing records, you at least say it's an improvement and it's a step in the right direction, and you landed your best recruiting class of your entire tenure. And then you get to pluck guys from the transfer portal to address areas of need. Like I said, defensive line I think is an area of need. Offensive line is an area of need. Depending upon where what Florida does with their defensive backs, I think Ben Hanks Jr. is a corner, and Stubbs and Hayward are safeties. I would probably say add some depth to the cornerback room, and I also think you may want to add a little depth to edge rusher specifically, not defense, not inside linebacker, edge rusher specifically, and bolster that group a little bit, and maybe add a tight end or two, maybe add another tight end to the mix. So that's really it. I think this is a very good recruiting class for Florida. I think this is Billy Napier's best recruiting class based off of rankings so far. We'll see which one of these guys produce for Florida in top 25 in 2025. Excuse me, because we've seen freshmen come in for Napier and bloom right out of the gate. You saw it with Trevor Etienne in 2022. You saw it with Trey Wilson and Jordan Castell the following year, and then this past year you got obviously DJ Lagway, but you have Jaden Ball step in. You had Miles Graham getting some good looks, look good in certain situations, and it's just all in all, I think the staff does a great job of evaluating talent off of what we've seen the last few years. Now you just need them to do a better job of managing clock situations, clock management, critical game situations, and hopefully that can transition into more wins for the Florida Gators, and they can build off of this 7-5 season and do better for 2025. So that will be it. Thanks for listening.